Well, welcome everybody to the Hard Money Podcast. I'm here with a good friend of mine, Lee, and I'm going to share a lot about Lee today. He's going to share a lot, but we're going to get deep into some passionate subjects. But Lee was just sharing with me right before we jumped on that he's currently suing the IRS for $2 million. He is, an active counselor to the Supreme Court, and he is someone who is basically a missionary when it comes to protecting, safeguarding, growing your money. He's someone I've relied on for a long time for advice. He's a friend. He's been through some really interesting family journeys. There's some insights he has into COVID that I think are fascinating. So let's just, get started, Lee. But, tell me about this lawsuit to the
Good,
IRS. I'm
good,
just curious.
good to be with you, Dutch. Well, uh, I've sued the IRS in the U.S. Federal Court of Claims, which is between the U.S. Federal Tax Court and the United States Supreme Court. And we've got a client who came to us and he overpaid the IRS by $2 million a number of years ago. And short story is the IRS won't give him his money back. They claim he didn't meet a filing deadline, but I think we can prove that he did. So that's what we're doing. And it's always fun to play with the IRS.
Yeah. I mean, I try not to play with the IRS because they're all wonderful human beings, and I think they're amazing, and hopefully they see me say that on video. But, I think it takes a very special person to understand that kind of system, right? And I think I live my life understanding or beating or breaking or getting through systems, and I think you're someone who understands the money system extremely well. Where did that passion start, Lee?
Passion started years ago. I wasn't supposed to be a asset protection tax type lawyer, and I never dreamed I'd work in the United States Supreme Court. I was supposed to be a patent attorney. I have a bachelor's in geology and a master's in chemistry and then a law degree. And the short story is I got out of law school and worked for the big time patent firm for about 6 weeks. And then all of a sudden, 10 years of education was gone. I got sick and I spent almost 6 months in intensive care at a university hospital and didn't work for 3 years. We had 3 little children. We'd been married 9 years and we'd done everything right. But without the help of our parents, they stepped in and helped us, we would have been homeless.
Mm-hmm.
My family would have been living in a car. And we didn't do anything wrong. When I say asset protection, you think lawsuit, right? No. It's a lot more than that. 56% of all bankruptcies in the United States are a result of somebody in the family getting sick. And the IRS is your major impediment to financial success. They're taking 25, 30% of everything you ever do.
Mm-hmm.
And people don't understand what taxes do to them. They have no clue. You have no clue what the IRS actually does to you. But, we lost everything. And I said, this ain't going to happen again. So I started to study asset protection and that ultimately branched off into estate planning and business structuring and taxes, and it all melts together after a little while. And the problem is you go see one attorney and he does the business structuring, you see another attorney, he does the estate planning, and you go see your accountant for your taxes, and nobody ever brings it all together into one ball for you so that you can understand it and everything works together. It all has to work together. And unfortunately, you're dealing with these professionals that have their little specialties, and they take one part of you and do this and one part of you do that. And you may be actually hurting the other part of you when you do that. If I get the best tax result, I may be limiting my asset protection or vice versa. And so it goes. So what I've tried to do is bring the whole thing together for people and teach them about it over the years, Dutch.
Well, I can appreciate that. I know, like, when we built our first investment fund, right, I did some research and I got, I would say kind of lucky, and I found a decent attorney who was able to get it accomplished and done, right? And then we had to work with a CPA firm to do the accounting and finance, and then they turned that into a mess. And then we went to another accounting firm to do the accounting, and they turned that into a mess. And then finally we found, a decent accounting firm to do our accounting, and we opened our second fund and then our third fund, right? And then we hit a wall legally, right? Because can only allow so many people to invest that are
Right.
non-accredited, right? And so,
You've got private placement rules, you got all kinds of stuff. That's a very specialized area in the law, Dutch. And
and
you need a good attorney who can do that. I couldn't do that. So
I went on this journey to find the next attorneys or different things, and tell you, it was tough. It was tough to find, to open our REIT and begin, our what we call a Reg A, our current investment vehicle for our investors and our students.
right.
It was tough, and I just think of, like, I'm good at this, right? I've talked to a lot of attorneys. I've known a lot of attorneys. I have attorneys that are
I'm
friends,
sorry.
and at the same time, like the first lawyers, basically took 50 grand and, you know, got nothing accomplished for almost, 14, 15 months. The second set of attorneys, I was lucky in the sense that they were able to get us, qualified with the SEC and get through the regulatory bodies and those kind of things. And then that poor guy was one of the people in my life who got COVID and got really sick. And so we had to go, and he basically he was a solo practitioner, right? And so we had to go and find another, attorneys to do the all the submissions and everything else during COVID. And so in the middle of COVID, we were left, trying to find a new law firm to handle, the legal side of things. And so, yeah, it's like when you and I come with some experience. So as a normal person trying to figure out asset protection or trying to figure that, it's difficult, man. Even today, do I really still, even though I have trusts and I have, different things set up for me and my family, or different health insurances, or different, insurances on the business, or different things, I do I really know what the best part is? I don't know. I really don't know.
With asset protection, there isn't any really best part.
Yeah.
It all comes together, and you mentioned insurance. Insurance is a huge asset protection tool, and you need to have insurance. I've always carried really heavy insurance. It's not that much more to carry a great policy than it is to just carry a normal policy. So get the great insurance. It saves your skinny more often than not. And then if the insurance, if somehow it gets through the insurance, or the insurance doesn't cover it, then we can do it. I mean, I've got a friend, and his wife is one of the best business structuring attorneys in the state. He has this great business that he spent his whole life putting together, and now his sons are operating in the business, and they're paying him a little bit each year, and that's his retirement. They're buying him out. And he's a real estate investor. I mean, you know that one, Dutch. And the wife didn't put together the real estate and the business. And he has a piece of property in the south end of town. And last Christmas, week before Christmas, he had a problem with this piece of property. A couple had come to him about 6-8 months earlier, and they were basically homeless. And there was this kind of guard shack on the piece of property. And they said, can we rent the guard shack and live in it? And he says, yeah, okay. I mean, he was doing him a favor. I'm sure you've been bit when you've been trying to do somebody a favor before. He was trying to do him a favor. And in the meantime, that phone is on silent, and I have no idea why it keeps ringing. I am sorry.
You're fine. We can edit and cut, my friend. That's the cool part. So
so I have no idea why it's doing that. But at any rate, he's got this couple living in the guard shack, and in the meantime, the city comes along and they say, this guard shack, it's not habitable. I think it didn't have two entrances. Two entrances, I think, was the problem. And so they said, get the people out. So the third-party management company, which had drawn up the lease and rented it to them, They sent him an eviction letter, and sure enough, people didn't get out. They kept living there. In fact, they kept paying rent. And the week before Christmas, they're doing meth and smoking in bed, and they burn the place down. They get out, but she goes back in for her purse, and she doesn't make it back out. And the state has literally charged my friend. I mean, this is the nicest guy in the world. He was my high school class president. They've charged him with murder 1. And they haven't had the trial yet. They've been kicking it down the road for a year because of COVID. And the lady's family, they're suing him. And the business structure is such that they can get that business. And they will get that business, which is going to wipe out his life's work, and it's going to wipe out the employment for his sons. And that's where we're at the moment. I've met with the family and we've done some little things, but once something happens to you, once you're in trouble, you can't go back and rearrange things. The law is set up with fraudulent conveyances, fraudulent transfer laws, all of these laws, which say that once the thing occurs, once you're in trouble, you can't go back and fix it. You can't go back and protect your assets. So story 1 is you got to interface the real estate investing with the business and think about, how do I protect real estate from business and business from real estate? And just structuring the business isn't enough. Just structuring the real estate isn't enough. You've got to figure out how they merge together. Story number 2 is you need to have it so that it works all the way along, and you have to do it now. You can't do it when you're in trouble, and that's what people miss. So,
Yeah, that's sad. It's a sad story. You know, like for me, my wealth is, built on, all about generational wealth, right? I don't, I'm at this point in my life, I think fairly well, me and my wife are taken care of for life, right? So now everything's about what do you create for your sons? And so he's losing his legacy that he built,
he's
on top of,
losing it for himself, his retirement and everything. He's losing this legacy that he wanted his sons to carry on. And it's a great company. It's a fun company. Pretty big, but
now to be charged with a murder crime, that's just,
yeah. And one of the observations of this is that his wife actually said, carry big insurance policies. That's your asset protection. Yeah, but the insurance policy isn't going to cover this one. So,
yeah, I try to carry a general liability that's across the board, right? No matter what, no matter what happens.
You do, but they've spun this so it's now a criminal activity.
Mm-hmm.
And even though he had no intent of anything going wrong, but the insurance isn't going to cover a criminal activity.
Yeah, he's going to have to.
So the insurance just got
first
out.
charge. He's going to have to win the first charge before he wins. Obviously, insurance companies are going to turn you down before you have any chance at all.
Turn you down every time, and I don't know if he can ever get them to help him in this case. So it happens, and it happens through no action, no fault of your own. You can be trying to do somebody a favor and still get bit.
With our students, right, that are real estate people, their first question is always, well, should I, create my first LLC? Should I create, before they even own a property, right? They're always asking me that question. Should they put every property in their own? Like, those are two of the most common questions. Should they put every property in its own separate LLC?
Well,
they're always asking me those two questions over and over and over.
Let me do my best to answer them. The answer is, 1, do you need an LLC? And the answer is yes. In this case, it wouldn't have protected the business, but if I have an LLC, it should protect me from what happens out in the LLC. It's got the corporate shield, just like a corporation. Additionally, The LLC has a second type of asset protection called charging order protection. And it protects the assets of the company from what happens to the owner personally. And this is where you get sick. That's not a business problem, that's a personal problem. And the question is, do you lose your real estate? And the answer is most people, yes. If I've put it in an LLC and the LLC is properly structured, then I can protect that piece of property from the bankruptcy and the illness in the family. So it becomes very important. Now, it depends
And
on which.
when you say structured, I think that's really key, Lee, because a lot of people, like if you just go on LegalZoom or what's Rocket Lawyer, right?
Yeah,
And
well,
try and create an LLC, they don't understand like there's an operating agreement, right? That
a
that
lot of the internet LLCs
structured right.
won't even give you an operating agreement. It's an extra $500 or $1,000 if you want an operating agreement. The operating agreement is your guts, your rule book for your company. And I will just tell you, if you do not have an operating agreement, you do not have any asset protection, period. There was a large ad agency down in LA, and they called me up. Oh, it's been 10 years. And they called me up and they say, Lee, we're in big trouble. Please help us. What had happened is they had been operating this large ad agency, and we're talking like 100 employees. And they'd been operating it for years as a partnership. Two guys owned it. And they finally woke up and said, hey, we need the asset protection. So they actually did LegalZoom, and they got an LLC. About a year later, they got sued, and they came in, and the argument in court was, hey, man, you don't have a real LLC. We can pierce the corporate veil and come after you personally. It took about 20 minutes worth of argument in court for them to say, yeah, you can come and get us personally. And the judge just set aside the LLC. They had the paperwork from LegalZoom. What they hadn't done is understand how to operate the LLC. And I'll just tell you in this case, and it's different in each case, but in this case, what happened is they had been operating as a partnership for decades. And everybody had been dealing with them as a partnership. When they put the LLC in place, they didn't go back and tell everybody they'd been dealing with for decades, hey man, we're not dealing as a partnership anymore. We are now dealing with you as an LLC. You're not dealing with me personally anymore. You're dealing with this company. They hadn't notified all of their clients that they'd changed. They hadn't changed their letterhead. They hadn't changed their business card. They hadn't changed their checks. They hadn't converted over to an LLC. So everybody that had been dealing with them had the expectation that they were dealing with a partnership.
Like living with your girlfriend.
I'm not quite sure I see that relationship.
So like if you live with your girlfriend for 7 years, right? The state would they make it so basically so you're married, right? So
yeah,
maybe
well,
it's different in every state.
This is a little different.
I think in 10 years, I've never gotten Lee to laugh, ladies and gentlemen, just so we're clear, right? Like
yeah, well, lawyers don't have any sense of humor that we're aware of, Dutch. Yeah. So, we're as bad as accountants. By the way, you do know how to tell if a lawyer's lying, don't you?
Nope. Here comes the lawyer joke.
Oh, come on, Dutch. I mean, his lips are moving. Every time you talk to one, he's lying. That was the easy part. Here's the hard part. Do you know what a good dead lawyer does?
A good dead lawyer does. Stops talking.
No, he lies still.
Oh, he lies still.
You'll get it in a minute. In
I got
any
it right
rate,
away. I got it right away. I'm
okay.
not
Well, you have
quickly.
nothing
Come on
slipping
now.
by you, huh, Dutch?
Come on now.
Uh, any rate, so where were we? We were talking about the ad
I don't
agency
know. We're talking about
and
girlfriends and
how you have
dead
to
lawyers
treat
and
just setting up the LLC and getting the paper filed is not enough to give you the asset protection.
mhm.
There are lots of things that you have to do. We call them formalities. And if you don't do them, you don't get the asset protection. It's that easy. So,
Well, let's see. From here, I think, when we look at current times, right? I feel like a lot of what you're talking about is our rights as people, right? Right as business owners, right as individuals and different things. And I feel like we're in a time politically where rights are being infringed on in a lot of different ways, right?
they're
And
being infringed on in a lot of different ways. We won't go into the First Amendment, your right to say things. We won't go into the Second Amendment, your right to bear arms. We won't go into any of this stuff. But I will say that there is a general attitude in the United States today that if you have money, if you have been successful, as Obama said, you didn't build that. And as people today say, you owe it to us.
Mhm.
I'm entitled. If you have a lot of money, something's wrong because you have cheated me, and I'm entitled to get part of that money, part of that wealth from you. And that's the attitude we're dealing with today. So it becomes very important, one, that you protect your assets as much as you can. Two, part of that is we need to drop your, I'm going to say, visibility, and you're not going to be anonymous. But if we have a number of LLCs, for example, that own different pieces of property, then it's not all aggregated into one place, and people don't automatically clock that as being this big pile of wealth. The other aspect of it is you need to control your taxes. I'll tell you that. You might remember the Wall Street occupiers, a decade or so ago. They were pounding on the pavement, screaming, "We need to kill everybody that makes over 125 or 250,000 a year." A lot of things happen to us that are no fault of our own.
Mhm.
This one we couldn't prevent, but a lot of the legal issues we can prevent. A lot of the tax issues we can prevent. They were screaming, the Wall Street occupiers, that anything that anybody that makes over $250,000 a year, we should kill.
Mhm.
Well, maybe you need to start moving your taxes down so that you're not above that level, adjusted gross income level of $250,000 a year, because you're going to take a hit. And there are a lot of politicians today, they kind of use that $250,000 benchmark, and basically they say, if you make over $250,000 a year, you don't deserve it. We need to take it away from you,
Mhm.
which goes against everything that our country was set up for.
Well, it's
But
interesting though, because our it's systematic, right? If you understand the system, it's not completely set up for you not to be able to continue to build wealth, right? Because the people who made the laws had wealth, right? And
yeah,
even the people making laws now have wealth, but the average person doesn't understand, right? They don't, like 90% of the world doesn't understand any of the systems, right? As far as, handling taxes or asset protection or adjusting your income, and those kind of things. And so it's interesting because it, the American dream is to build wealth, right? Like that's the immigrate into America, have freedom, own a own
that's
a
the
home,
American
raise
dream, and
you know
it has been wonderful for people over the last 250 years. It's been incredible.
and the scary part though is when you take away that dream, governments are not stable. There's not been that many governments in the history of the world that lasted 250 years. Like you go,
No,
like I've never been a conspiracy theorist. Like that was never my
no, I'm not a
stick.
conspiracy theorist either.
But then I started looking at realities as I've as I've gotten older, there's a lot of realities. It's not
Well,
conspiracy that governments that take people's rights and take people's money away fail. It's not a conspiracy that there's not been many governments in the history of the world that have lasted over 200 years.
no, and it's not a conspiracy that Facebook and Twitter and everybody else is silencing certain views. We have supposedly free speech in this country, and nobody should be policing my speech. And yet that's exactly what's happening now. And we shouldn't really get into the political stuff. I don't want to go there because I'm certainly not an expert on it, but I'm upset that this sort of stuff is happening, whether it's right-wing speech or left-wing speech or whatever it is. We should have the right to have free speech here, for example.
I mean,
and we should have
it's so difficult though, right? There's certain subjects I won't even touch because, my concern is that, someone in the government will, whisper to the SEC and say, hey, let's not qualify this company because
you're exactly right. You're exactly right. And I'm writing a newsletter today, as a matter of fact, and basically the premise is you need to protect yourself from the IRS. The IRS has been weaponized against groups and individuals. There's no question about that. It shouldn't be that way. But
let me just caveat real quick, like, the people at the SEC have been, fantastic, for us. And so I'm not saying that, like, when we call with a challenge, they pick up the phone, they respond. And I will tell you, they do stick a thumb up our butts to make sure that everything we're doing is, 100% clean and audited. And like they make sure they're out there. Like, I can tell they really are out there in their job role, right, to protect the consumer. I don't know that I agree with the fact that a non-accredited investor is limited on the amount of money that they can invest into a profitable like somebody can only invest 10% of their annual income with in a public fund like ours. But
they're protecting
I don't agree with that. But their job is to do that, and so they do an excellent job of that, right? So
yeah, and most of the IRS people are great people and everything else. I've got a number of former IRS agents that work in my office, and I love them. They're great, but the government can get off on us, and so it becomes even more important that you can control your taxes, and you can know how to work these entities for the asset protection and to lower your taxes. And part of it is just to keep a lower profile today, frankly.
I mean, I'm left in a quirky position. Like, do I leave California? Do I stay in California? My political views don't align with.
Well, I'm in Utah, and I'm just going to tell you that I don't appreciate I don't mind the Californians moving into Utah. They're increasing the prices of our real estate. They're doubling because everybody from California is coming to Utah. But just leave your California values in California. That's all I ask. And yet they're up here trying to change our way of government. There was a big discussion on the radio I was listening to yesterday. They want to go to the proposition form of government instead of the legislative form of government. And that's exactly what's gotten California into its problems. So,
because in a proposition form, you can really politicize something, or
you can really politicize and money
very one-sided
and everything else. So,
because with most propositions, there's very little educated debate.
It's all emotional advertisement. Money wins. Mm-hmm. And that isn't necessarily true with the legislature, particularly where we have what's called a caucus system, and we're way off base of what your people really want to talk about, I think. But the point is that we're changing, and in order to try and keep the values and the opportunities and stuff that you've been used to, it's going to require that you even become more masterful at using what I call the legal tools, the LLCs, the trusts, the tax planning, all of that sort of stuff. You're going to have to become even more masterful at that in order to preserve for yourself the ability to function in our new societies.
So,
So
my question is even just flat out just the state taxes, right? Just that alone is so significant for me, that it's worth changing my state citizenship. But then, politically, do you want to stay and try and change things from within? I think there's going to be a changing of the guard in California in some ways, in the next coming elections that will really surprise people. Because people forget that Ronald Reagan and Arnold Schwarzenegger, both pretty large Republicans, are both California governors, right?
right.
And so there is a time when California was much more of a red state than what people truly realize, right? And so it's interesting, because there's a lot of wealth here. There's a tremendous amount of wealth here,
Yep.
and
It's
and
one of the
and
biggest economies in the world.
it was never built. Wealth was never built by socialism, right? And so I'm more middle of the road because I have both blue some blue ideals and many red ideals, right? And so for me, it's the far extremism of either one obviously is offsetting to me,
Right.
and so they're like marching on our capital to me is very very challenging. I probably offend some people, but if somebody's marching on the Capitol and breaking down doors, if the Capitol Police shoot them, I you're breaking into the government. It's not what I want. I don't think I want Americans killing Americans, right? I don't want people trying to march for their rights and different things, but I believe in peaceful protests and different things. But we have a right, but you start taking away our rights, and people rebel, and it's interesting times. That's why we built I know I probably haven't talked to you much about our survivalist side of our
I know
project.
that it exists, but that's all I know.
I mean, we built it. My wife came to me and she said, "Hey," she said, "Sweetheart, I'm scared." And I'm like, "What do you mean you're scared?" She's like, "I feel like we need a plan B," right? And this was, you know, maybe May or June of last year. And 2020 when COVID was really, starting to just everything was starting to come about. Like there's just a whole lot of unknown. And she said, we really need a plan B." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" And we started talking about it, and you know, um, between the safe with the firearms and the backup food and different things that I had already been doing, you know what I mean, storing water and generators and
Sure.
different things that I just started doing without really thinking about it a whole lot. I said, well, if she's that concerned, I've never seen her afraid a day in her life. I mean, Vanessa. So, I'm just never, she's just a fearless woman. And I was like, well, then a lot of other people across the country have got to be feeling that way too. And so we bought a farm and made it, as an escape, as a plan B for people if stuff hits the fan, and so it's got 2 miles of riverfront, and it's got sustainable food resources and shelter and different things. And so it gave us a plan B, a great farm. And then we started offering it out to kind of our inner circle, our community of private friends and relationships and our higher level investors, right, who've invested with us over the years and stuff. And man, it just kind of caught on wildfire. And it's probably we achieved in 2020, we achieved record returns, right, the highest returns we've ever achieved as a company, but in a large part just because we kind of have an insurance against the chaos in the world with our survivalist project, right? We do our real estate investing every day, which we're very good at, but the survivalist project was kind of the insurance. As stuff got worse, it just continued to become more and more popular. And so what we initially bought was 454 acres, and now we've had to buy 2,000 acres. And now we're looking at 800 acres in New Mexico. And I've kind of built a plan to buy 20 properties across the United States with an average of about 500 acres each, and have a place where people can go to, a community. If things really get worse, like they could potentially get, where like it's so hard to imagine, right? Like AI is something that I never even was you see the old Arnold Schwarzenegger Terminator movies, but
right?
AI is, and all experts say is going to surpass this human intelligence as, the superior intelligence on Earth, like now, not 20 years from now or 5 years from now, but now. And then you look at, I started studying like Russia and China can build a 20 or 30-year plan to unease the United States. You know what I mean? And we live on a 4-year plan, and
Right.
so I just started looking at different things, and I just said, man, I actually really do believe this for my family. I really do believe that this is something I need to have available um to my family. And then whenever I look at my family, I look at my greater family, right? It's like in the investment funds, I'm the largest investor in our investment funds. But so then when I look at my investors and their money, I say that's my extended tribe, and so then I said the same thing about survivalists. I was like, if I need this and I continue to need this, and I want it available to me if I'm, was visiting someone in Florida, or I wanted it available to me if I was visiting someone in Utah, right? I think, other people want the same thing, and it's kind of proven itself. So I don't know, how do you look at the whole potential chaos in the world?
Well, I don't know. I'm maybe optimistic and think it's going to work itself out. I can look back at periods of our history when things were in chaos, basically, and they've worked themselves out somehow. Uh, so hopefully it works itself out. I think that there are a lot of really good people in the United States. And I think as long as there's still a lot of really good people in the United States will be blessed generally to be a
Yeah,
home
I
for
I
them.
agree too. I agree too. I also would like to believe that nobody's going to sue my business anytime soon, and and inevitably I'd rather be prepared, right, than non-prepared is one way I look at it.
Well,
um
you need to be prepared for that in a legal stance, as well as be prepared with the extra food and the water and all of that sort of stuff as well.
I also say,
So,
like, the first time I put away an emergency finances, right, the first time I watched that, my first Dave Ramsey financial piece, 20 years ago, and I put away money for a financial emergency, it seemed like I had far fewer financial emergencies throughout my life after I did that. And so I kind of look at, asset protection as like, when I do it, it seems like, you know, we're less exposed. It's same thing with the survivalist stuff, right? When I do it, it feels like it just kind of changes the peace, right, that I have. And I know people find peace through different ways, and faith, but it helps me, a lot of ways as I prepare for these different parts of it. I know, the day we became a REIT, we were qualified with the SEC. We received 3 lawsuits that day, and all 3 were just frivolous. One was about what do you call it? Calls, unsolicited phone calls, right? And another one was a slip and fall on a sidewalk, and all 3, we were able to, get dismissed or taken care of, really easily. And but that was the day that's just like you said, your exposure, right, out there in the world, like your presence, like how many people can see what you're doing and stuff. And I often wonder, is like, did somebody just sit there and watch the funds becoming qualified and literally just file lawsuits every time a fund becomes qualified, right?
I don't know. It could well be. It's not stupid to break up, I'm going to say, wealth. Gates is going around with different companies buying up all the farmland in the United States right now. And Disney, when he bought his land for Disney World and Epcot and everybody down in Florida, he used, I think, like 60 different companies to buy the pieces of property in those names. And people didn't know what he was doing. And it's not stupid to make it so that it's not obvious to people what you're doing.
Hmm. Hmm. I'm very happy about, the value increase of our farm during during the last year. So, I will thank Bill Gates and others for that. The interesting part is, with what we're doing with our project is that it's just kind of creating its own life. If that, like, the
Yeah.
people, like, there's people begging to run and operate it, and bringing in resources and inventions, and just so many different resources that, I mean, I'm a survivalist novice. I mean, an absolute novice, but it's attracted these experts that are, you know, geniuses in their fields, and it's fascinating because I didn't go searching for them either, right? They found us, which is pretty
Pretty
awesome.
cool. Yeah, that's great.
You know, when I'm trying to remember the first time, like, where did we meet the very first time? I'm just trying to remember, was it in like Tampa with one of the Dave and Dustin
It was in Tampa with
masterminds gatherings?
one of the Dave and Dustin masterminds, or you were speaking at one of the old events that Dave and Dustin originally put on. I can't remember what they were called.
Mm-hmm.
But it was undoubtedly down around Tampa, and somehow Dave and Dustin were involved.
So what do you think, like 2008,
Probably 2000.
2007? 14 years, maybe 15, maybe 15,
Yeah,
2005.
at least that. Yeah.
Oh, it's a long time. As long as I've known my wife.
Oh, you've only been married 15 years?
No, we've only been married 11, but I knew her a
Okay.
couple years before that.
Well, I look back at what happened 20 years ago or 10 years ago, and I lost my wife a year and a half ago to a horrible disease called ALS. And I'm wondering, well, do I get remarried? What do I do? I could be here and active another 20, 25 years at least. And oh, well, that's not too long. I can handle that. But if I look back at what happened 10 or 20 years ago, whoa, that was a long time ago. And a lot of water's gone under the bridge since then. So, do I really want to be alone for the next 20 years? I don't know. So that's where I am.
That's a thought process, right? That I think many men and women, go through as they hit that second or third phase of life. It's
Yeah, you lose your spouse, and a lot of people do lose their spouse in the 50s or 60s of their life, and some go on and remarry and some don't.
Yeah, my father-in-law's, been remarried, and I'll tell you, I they what did they probably remarry? And he's 70, so he probably remarried at 63, right?
Okay.
And so they've been very, very happy. And
Well, that's great.
but man, when I met him, he is going through a divorce, and I was like, man, I don't know if this guy's ever gonna get married again. And then he did, and he's happy,
Well,
and
that's great. That's
you know
great.
you'll go,
It does work.
like, people go through these selfish phases, right? Where you're like, I really enjoy my own time. I really enjoy not answering to someone. I really enjoy, this and this. And then they go through those lonely phases, right? Where if there's not someone to share your life with, then kind of, what's the point, right? And and
Yeah.
and and then people find peace and balance through different ways. So, and
Well,
having
I
kids
was I
changes
was
that
married
motivation too. So,
I was married to Christy for 47 years, and it was pretty much perfect, and I can't think of it without her. And yet, can I replace her? No. Uh, can I be happy with somebody else? I don't know.
hmm hmm
So that's where I am. My disappointment was, as Christy said, there'd be girls lined up out to the street and down the block. And uh, maybe it's COVID, I don't know, but there hasn't been anybody lined up. I think I'm going to put a neon sign out front and say single or something.
well, we'll make sure that this podcast gets a lot of views, Lee. Okay, and
Right, there
we'll
you
put
go.
in we'll put in a special link in the description, right? And it'll be a
Yeah,
information, right? Yeah,
there you go. Yeah. No, don't do that. Don't do that. I'm okay, Dutch.
and then we'll
Thanks for
send you
the
your
help.
application, both men and women. We'll send you all applications for. I
I
didn't
don't
even
know
get him to
about that.
smile on
You
that one. I
know,
didn't even get him to smile on that one.
I've always been, well, you speak on the circuit and stuff, and all of the guys, they were always propositioned for years. Everybody's been propositioned in the industry. And I mean, I've been speaking 40 plus years and I've never been propositioned except once. Christy and I were down in Key West and she went trucking into this t-shirt shop well ahead of me. And finally I get into the t-shirt shop behind her and the clerk comes up. Hi, how are you? How you doing? Where are you staying? How long are you going to be here? And I'm going, yes, I'm finally getting propositioned. The only problem was the guy wasn't my type. And so at any rate, Dutch.
You might have a better sense of humor than me, Lee. That, you know, it's a good one. I think when you're married and you're happily married and your intentions are laid down right? And you're if you're out there, in the world and you're traveling or you're speaking or you're going different things, right? I think you'll see less of the propositions than what are actually happening because
Well,
your foundation is right.
I've always talked about my family and my wife and stuff in my speeches and things. And I think the attitude just came across, I'm not interested. And so I never had any problem.
Well, maybe when you go out on the road now, you'll be propositioned a whole bunch of times as
No, I
COVID.
still talk about my wife. I don't bother saying that she's dead.
Yeah.
So
Well, there'll be a time when you'll be ready. There'll be a time when
yeah,
you'll be ready.
sometime.
But we're definitely putting that link, just so you know. It's going to be crystal clear. It's going to happen.
Right. There you go.
We're going to put your head on top of an Arnold Schwarzenegger body and give you
That might
some
help.
pictures. Help tremendously.
That could help. Yeah, let's do that and see what it looks like. I'd be interested in that one.
There we go. Um, Lee, I think we're gonna wrap up. What I do want though is I always want our I know there's so much quality stuff that you give people, and that you provide as education, training, and enlightenment in some ways. I do want to for you to be able to share, a link with people, and we'll cut it into a mini link. So why don't you do a quick, 30-second, 60-second, just what you would want to give to people, and so they can come
I
and
think
see you in your business.
the best thing I can give to people is just information. And you may not know it, Dutch, but I have a YouTube channel out that's actually very popular, and people can go to it and learn a lot about asset protection and taxes and stuff. I've got, I think, like 250, 300 little 5-minute videos out there explaining things. And the YouTube channel will help people. If they want to go to the YouTube channel, it's legalese, legalees.com. We don't sell anything on it or anything, but people find it really, really helpful for them. And if your people want to use that, I mean, anybody can use it, obviously, but they should know about it.
Well, good. So I've known Lee for over a decade. We've done a lot of business together. His integrity is at the highest level of doing business. And so, anybody
Well,
who's
thank you.
watching this or anybody from my tribe, when he says he's going to give on legalese and some of the things he shared today were gold, when it comes to your assets and your wealth and money. But I just thank you for your time, Lee. I
No,
appreciate
it's
your
great to
friendship.
be with you, Dutch. Anytime I can help you and Vanessa and your tribe, be happy to do that.
All right, brother. Well, we did it. We made it. We made it over an hour, and phones ringing and everything else. It's great
I
content.
apologize for that.
Oh, you don't need to. Not even for a second. You're great. I just such gratitude you being here today.